this House of Bertram. House of Bertram.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Queerly Faithful podcast, where on every first Monday of the month, we push against the norms of Christianity and culture from a queer, progressive Christian perspective. I am Pastor Casey, the Queerly Faithful pastor, and this is the Queerly Faithful podcast. Welcome to the show. This is our first bonus episode. For any of you who listened to our episode about family with Bertram and D'Angelo, that episode was actually recorded after I had done an episode with D'Angelo when I saw them in Chicago, where they live and are a pastor. And so I am excited to share with you this bonus episode. From time to time, you will get these bonus episodes where I will do an interview with a friend or a colleague, or I may just even jump on and just share some thoughts with you about the world. That's sort of the joy of going solo, is being able to just jump on when I need to or when I feel led to and offer a perspective to you. So I hope you enjoy this show. This episode is meant to be an episode about courage and faith. It is about holding on to the most important parts of our being, which for some of us is our faith and our sexuality. No one can take these things from us, friends. No one can rob us of what God has given us, what God has claimed over our lives. And so for many of us who have had to deconstruct and let go of our Christianity, the Christianity we might have inherited, this episode is an opportunity for maybe you to pick up some of what you've left behind. Or maybe it's an opportunity for you to be encouraged by somebody else's journey of faith. The audio is not great, so please forgive that, but we do the best we can here at the Queerly Faithful podcast. So I hope you enjoy. So I am here in beautiful Chicago. It is the middle of summer, and I learned that it is not the windy city for the reasons that I grew up believing, thanks to my sister D'Angelo, who is here with me on the podcast today. But it has been windy and beautiful. The sun has been out. People have been lovely. The food has been great. But most importantly, it has been good to be with you, D'Angelo. D'Angelo is my sibling in the House of Bertram and a pastor here in Chicago. And so we are going to spend some time today talking about D'Angelo, you grew up in this city. I had the joy, the pleasure of just wandering around with you yesterday for my birthday. And just seeing the city through your eyes was really beautiful, as is your spirit always. So what is it like to be you? What is it like to be a queer pastor here in Chicago?
Yeah, I want to first say, hey, y'all. And thank you, sis, for having me on. What is it like being a queer pastor here in Chicago? That is a complex question because I think Chicago has such a deeply rooted in a segregated neighborhood, raced neighborhood, and even, with sexuality. There's a gay neighborhood, there's a gay male neighborhood, there is a lesbian neighborhood, right, where all the lesbian goes to hang out. And so what I would say about that is that there are communities that I feel most safe with here, that I don't need to prove myself, or fight for my acceptance. But then there are communities such as I grew up in where I would not feel safe, where I go there, but because I came out of the community, right, they honor me, they like talk to me and everything, but they don't honor my queerness. And so I had to leave out of spaces, right, where I lived to find my queer identity, and then also to do that within the confines of ministry as well. And so what I would say what it's like is finding your tribe in the midst of perseverance and chaos, and to honor who you are in the complexity of yourself. Because I have to honor who I am, and like, I came from conservative Pentecostal background, right? And now I'm a part of UCC, a very liberal, outgoing denomination that accepts all for who they are. Sure. And so I have to balance the two, right? I don't throw out Pentecostalism, but how does Pentecostalism then become queer?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, right? Because a lot of the young people I work with, or people in general, who come out of Pentecostalism, often many of them feel like they have to forsake all of that because in some ways there's so much religious trauma. But we drove by your home church that you attended twice, right? Like not just once, but you went back there. And to see your heart for that community, to see your heart for your neighborhood, but also like, how does your call, I guess, like what do you see your call being in these days?
So for me, I have different calls, right? And I think we all have different calls. It's not just one call, right? And so I think that I'm called to using stories to build relationships, to explore, I would say, transformation or a solution to a challenge within a community. And I say explore, and when I say explore, that means rehearsal and also sharing stories that we can pick up on different solutions to a challenge. Because you may have gone through a breakup and I've gone through a breakup, but you went through it a little different. So when you tell me, I begin to glean from your story.
That's right.
And so then I can rehearse some of what I have gleaned from, and maybe it worked for me and maybe it don't. And that comes out of my work of Augusto Boal, Theater of the Oppressed. And so I think I'm called to that, but it shows up in many different ways. It shows up as a chaplain, pediatric chaplain, where sitting with children and their family in very traumatic and difficult moments of their health situation, from traumas to attempting to die by suicide to cancer and blood disorders, just walking alongside them, to pastoring Urban Village Church, where I'm the site pastor of two of those sites, Wicker Park and High Park Woodlawn. And that shows up as living into our values of being bold, inclusive, and relevant, and really allowing people to see the Spirit of God, right? I think I'm called to that community to invite them to a Pentecostal experience within this work. To inviting them to see the Holy Spirit as indwelled, and that Holy Spirit can be tapped into to bring creativity in their lives. And then, to me as a Black, gender non-conforming person here in Chicago who is deeply rooted in justice work. And how do I show up? Restorative justice spaces, circles, and healing circles and justice circles and drumming circles. And so it's all around story.
So that's a lot to carry, right? I mean, just the intersections of your own being, but adding the responsibility. I mean, call is always about responsibility, right? What you are responsible for, what God has given you, your portion. Let's back up for a moment because, one of the things as queer people you will often do to another is say, what was it like to come out, right? I mean, that is sacred conversation, I believe. Like, but it is similar to evangelicals or charismatics saying, what is your testimony?
Yes.
It is of the same spirit that question is asked, right?
Yes.
And so I would love to know, when did you feel called to ministry? And what has your journey been like?
Whoa. Now, that's a long story. But, I'm going to try to put it into a concise version. So I believe that I felt called to ministry third grade. I would see visions and I would dream, and I would keep going up to go get saved every Sunday. Yes, and they'd be like, yes. D'Angelo, you need to know you're saved already. You're already baptized. No, why do you keep coming up? And I'm like, no, it's something else. And so they put me on junior deacons and then junior ministers, and I believe in 7th grade or 6th grade, I had this dream about my bishop at the time, and I wrote him a letter, and I told him I had this dream, and I told him about it, and I told him the revelation of the dream. And we had a meeting, and I told him more, and he's like, you're a prophet, and you are called to ministry, and I'm going to put you under 2 people. And there was our youth minister. I'm just going to say his name because I don't know if Patrick Winfield, who is now one of the campus pastors of Potter House, TD Jakes, and someone, Elder York, this mother of the church, who basically, cast out demons, everything, you know what I'm saying? Very powerful. And he put me under them, and I went through courses, and the sense of call became stronger and stronger. And in the midst of that, I was coming into my identity as a queer person, right? As a gay person, that's what I thought then, right? A homosexual, and in that, I was trying to fight. I thought it was a demon. And so I was praying Lord, take this demonic force away from me, oh God. Cleanse my heart, cleanse my mind. Just going ham. And nothing happened. And then pathways to love on myself even more began to happen in high school. So I stumbled upon this. Well, I ditched school. And when I was ditching school, I was shopping, and then I met one of my friends who I knew was gay, and he was like, come to this party with me, D'Angelo. And I'm like, what type of party? He's like, it's called Curiosity. And I'm like, okay, what type of party is it? He's like, where the fam be at. And I'm like, what fam? What are you talking about? And then I was like, are you saying it's a gay party? I don't know about all that. And he's like, just come. And so I was like, okay. I'll come. I went there, and wow, my whole world just opened up. I was like, what? And then I started going to the drop-ins. And then and some of the drop-ins were about faith and sexuality. And I was just like, whoa. And what happened there is that I saw young people like me struggling in the ways in which I was struggling. Even worship leaders, right? Struggling in the same ways. And so we would just talk about God and be queer and open. And that allowed for me to know that there's space. But I never seen a pastor queer and in ministry. So I still was praying the gay away, right? And then I went to college. And as I was in college, I got to a point where I was depressed. My cousin died in a car accident my freshman year, and I came back. I preached his eulogy, and I came back, and I was just in a dark place, and I was like, all of this Christianity stuff. And I began to like explore other religions, other faiths, spirituality. And it was a great time until.
What was it about? Sorry, but what was it that led you to that place of being done with Christianity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think for many of us who are LGBT, that's like the first thing to go.
Yes.
But what was it specifically that led you out?
I think it was like this. So I was held on a high pedestal. And I wanted to be a kid.
Yeah.
And I was there for a while. Like I was there, like I was the assistant youth pastor by freshman year of high school. And so I never was able to be a kid and mess up. I was pulled in, be like, no, you cannot do this. And I wanted to explore during college, you know? And I didn't feel the possibility to explore during college. So I was like, Christianity is the bond that is the jail that is holding me. So let me get rid of it.
Yeah.
But what I learned was, fast forward, it wasn't Christianity. It wasn't my faith. I don't believe in myself as a Christian. I believe myself as a believer in the gospel of Yeshua. But it was the people and the doctrine, the cultural rules that were my prison.
I think that's really important, as we're sitting here, talking about this, because I think there are so many people that it's not Jesus they want to walk away from. It's not their own spirituality, because for many of us, this is just what we've inherited. And so it's hard for us to, navigate the world outside of what we've been given. But what we are pushing up against are, like you're saying, the cultural norms in any of our communities. It's the ignorant pastors who've not done good, hermeneutical work or exegesis to navigate these scriptures in a way that is life-giving than life-damning. And so I think, as I imagine other listeners and I, as you're telling the story, are just reminded of all the places in our own lives where we've just said, we're done with this. And it's sad to me, actually, because I think of like how many people walk away from church because of this feeling of shame and guilt, because they think that they have to be one and the same with their religion. And religion, or, the institution, should be the one place where you can go to ask any question, to actually explore.
Yes.
Instead of running away. It's like, what is that Amish tradition where you leave after 18 or whatever? It's almost like, for many of us who grew up evangelical or charismatic, it's almost like you have to have that breaking point, that moment where you go away, so that you might pick up anything worth keeping.
I think what it allows is a space for God to chase after us.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And for us to tap into God as love.
That's right. And grace.
And yes, and grace.
Yeah.
And so with my story, my sophomore year, I went to China to escape. I didn't want to go home, because home was not a safe space for me at the time. I didn't want to, go anywhere else. I wanted to go as far away as possible and experience something anew.
Yeah.
And while I was there, culture shock hit me. I'm still thinking about how I'm going to come home. I want to come out. I want to do all of these things. Like, what's going to happen?
Because, it's going to follow you.
Yes.
It don't matter where you go on the planet, honey.
And I was like Jacob. I wrestled with God. Yeah. I said, you know what? You going to give me an answer, and I'm not going to let you go until you give it to me.
Yeah.
And I took a self-care week. I said, I can't do this. I need to have a week of mental health. And as I was in my hotel room, I cried. I was reading the Bible, and I said, you got to give me an answer. And all of a sudden, Holy Spirit, just for me, I heard clear as day, no thing can separate you from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ. Right, Romans? Nothing can separate you from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ. Kept playing over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, I accept you. Because you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and all your fabulousness.
Yes, yes.
And it kept playing.
Yeah.
Nothing can separate you from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You are fearfully and wonderfully made, and all your fabulousness.
Yes. Yes.
It kept playing until I got it. I started crying. I released a lot of, and then I laughed. It was like laughter came over me. And this happens a lot in my life. Joy.
Joy comes in the morning.
And I was like, nobody can tell me nothing now. I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my mom, da-da-da-da-da. It was wonderful. And meanwhile, while I was dealing with me and God was dealing with my mama.
Wow.
I came home. I was ready, I came out with a letter. And then my mom didn't even read the letter yet. And she just said, nothing can separate you from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ.
Come on.
And I was just like, God been talking to you too. All right, good. And she said, you are wonderfully, fearfully and wonderfully made. And all your fabulousness. And I was like, same thing. God moves in our relationships. Yeah. If we allow God to. God moves in our relationships. If we allow God. And also, and when I say allow, when we wake up and see God moving in our relationships, or we open our eyes or explore where God is moving in our relationships. So that's when the shift began to happen.
Earlier you said, I spent all this time in prayer and nothing happened. To arrive in a hotel in China where God said, nothing needs to. Because nothing can separate you.
Yes. Do all that prayer of deliverance and all that stuff, and it was just that moment of being on foreign land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
For God needed me to be in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar place to allow for me to be familiar and comfortable with me.
That's right. I think it's so interesting as we're talking about this that you're quoting Paul, right? Because so often Paul... So often, Paul is the one, baby. Paul is the one that ruins the fun. But yet, even I think of my own journey. I went to IHOP. You know about IHOP? The International House of Prayer, not pancakes. And I remember them trying to cast demons out of me, and they'd say things like, are you healed yet? Are you healed? I just remember being like, tonight is the night I'm done with this. Like, if I'm not healed in this space, in IHOP, there ain't no place, baby. Ain't no place. And that the word that washed over me was, you are a new creation in Christ Jesus. You are a new creation.
Yes. Once again.
Yeah.
Paul,
who's always ruining the fun, is the one in this moment that came to my head that just emerged in my heart. And as we will have talked about family already by this point. We had Bertram on. And I just think about, the relationships that have to be established to help us to walk this faith, this queerly faithful journey. But that first relationship is the one with you that matters.
Yes. And what I want to say about that is, yes, it's the first relationship with you, but for me, I am a part of. So Ubuntu, I live by that philosophy. I am because you are because I am.
That's right.
And so I don't see myself as an individual, like, who does not need anyone else, who is not in interconnectivity with anyone. So I see me in you, and I hope you see me in. I hope you see you in me.
Absolutely.
And so when we begin to create relationship, we begin to expand our consciousness of ourselves and our consciousness of God and our consciousness of community and how we show up in it. And I think this is why, like, I have a love-hate relationship with Paul, because Paul, he has these individual moments, but then he wakes up to the collective moment.
Yes.
And when he wakes up to the collective moment, he begins to talk in the spirit and not in the flesh.
Come on. Yes. Yes. And then he says things like,
nothing can separate you from the love of God, which is in Jesus Christ.
Exactly. I may be an ass, but the larger picture tells me something different.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, as we are having this conversation, I'm thinking about, like, coming back to what you were saying around how you see yourself in these different spaces. You are safe in this space, but not in this one. But you're working towards, you know, living authentically in this space so that some may see, right? But it is a hard journey to walk in this way, right? I mean, and I think that just hearing you, D'Angelo, and knowing you and loving you and understanding that your story is wrapped up in mine and mine in yours. There is a way in which leading as queer clergy that is so essential, because I think that people see us. Because I think that whether you are against homosexuality, but you love Paul, and then you hear conversations like this and you're like, what the hell? Or you are that queer teenager who goes to a church where every Sunday they hear things like, you are bad and you are broken. Or you sit at a dinner table where your parents say things like, you will not eat here if you cannot use the gender and the name you were born with. To hear this conversation transforms young people too, walking in this way, right? And so I would love to hear from you. Like, what does it mean to be queerly faithful to you?
Let's think about this question, and it is to be Christ-like, because Christ came to dismantle systems that was of the norm, to disrupt ways in which people saw the religious, to meet those who are on the margin just where they are.
Exactly.
And I believe that queer faith is to turn shit upside down.
Yes.
And that's even the doctrines, that's even the understanding of who we are as human beings, gender and sexuality, and what does family look like, to turn that shit upside down.
Yeah.
And I think that being queerly faithful means to look at systems and see the possibility to say, okay, that didn't work. Well, that's not working, or it's working in a detrimental way. Say, what in it that actually shows love? And turn all of that other shit upside down so that we can rebuild a firm foundation at the top, and all of that other stuff. I don't think to get rid of it, because what happens is the ground uses the bad stuff to create nutrients, right?
Yes.
For growth.
Yeah.
And so if I turn it upside down and I begin to deal with it from a love effect, then all of that other stuff will become nutrients for us to be resilient, powerful, queer, non-apologetic. And so, that's what I'm faithful to that.
I see that in you. I see that in the way that you live your life and the way that you care for others, the way that you hold them accountable. Just your being speaks to those things. And for that, I am so grateful. So thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I just want to say thank you. You are an amazing being, and I'm privileged to have you as my sis and a part of this House of Bertram. House of Bertram. And I just want people to know that there are tribes out there like the House of Bertram that's willing to walk with you, journey with you, be your strength when you need it, be a cry with you, be upset with you, and also challenge you.
Yeah.
No, you didn't get that right that time. Let's explore this a little bit way. So open yourselves up to the tribe that God in the Spirit is leading you to.
On that note, we are so glad that you joined us for this conversation. There will be more. That will conclude our show today. To add your voice to this particular conversation or to any of the episodes to come, you can comment on the show notes at thequeerlyfaithfulpastor.com. In the show notes, you will find the relevant links and a complete list of all the ways to add your voice to this conversation, including the Faithful Talkback, which you can do every month by calling in and leaving a voice message at 916-534-8163. As long as your message is thoughtful and not hateful, we will add your voice to the end of every episode. So again, I just want to say thank you to D'Angelo for their amazing pastoral leadership, for just being a bright light in the world. You can support the show by simply making sure you follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if the platform allows it, leave a rating and/or review. A shout out and thank you to the many people who make this podcast possible. To Jeff Manildi for his production help, Ryan Casada for the music, and for you, the listeners, for making the stream come true. Peace out.